On this episode of Phinside The NFL, I am joined by Arteaga from 3 yards per carry for our annual post-draft discussion. We're going to discuss the Miami Dolphins defensive front, Ramsey, Tyreek Hill, and everything under the sun when it comes to the Miami Dolphins. So do me the favor, smash that like button, subscribe if you are new, and as always, let's get into this.
Loses the football. Touchdown! Got it!
You have got to be kidding me.
Jalen Waddle has a Dolphin touchdown.
And he will score! Deep upfield on the near side, man open. Touchdown! The run from Tua Tagovailoa.
Touchdown!
He's going deep. He's got it for the touchdown again. Beautiful day to be a Dolphin fan. Let's go!
What is good, Fin Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason, and we are back here for another one. And today I am joined by Arteaga from 3 yards per carry. Like I said, it's become an annual post-draft discussion between me and him. Alf, how are you doing, sir? As we head into May, rookie minicamp has wrapped up. The schedule has been released. We now know our opponents. And when we'll be facing them, more importantly, and where. Also, hey, there's excitement in the air because of the draft class a little bit, even with the departures of Calais Campbell and Armstead and the drama surrounding Tyreek as well as Ramsey. We'll discuss it all. But, hey, how you feeling right now with the status of the Dolphins overall?
I'm pretty excited for this season. It seems like the team is going under some culture changes. It's obvious some of the changes that they've made, and it's good to see that they realize they're self-aware enough to try to work on the things that they needed to fix from this past season, namely get bigger, get more physical, revamp the entire interior defensive line, and they've executed on it. And you really can't fault this team after this offseason. And look, we can nitpick all we want about this guy or that guy. I had my own issues with the draft, but I absolutely love what they did with the first 3 picks, including the trade. As it turns out, the trade for Jonah Savaiinaea actually saved them, Jonah Savaiinaea, because he was going to be a New England Patriot with the next pick in that round. So you can't complain. At the end of the season, we said this team is desperate for interior defensive line help. They went out and they did that. They rebuilt that entire room, rebuilt it young, and we said they needed guards. And they added James Daniels and Jonah Savaiinaea, and you got to be happy about that as well. So they went out to tackle those 2 things, and I think that they accomplished those 2 things. So you got to be pretty happy about that. Now, only one weakness remains. That's the cornerback position after they trade Jalen Ramsey.
All right, so let's start getting into things, and let's go a little bit in chronological order. Let's start with Tyreek Hill. Now, me and you have already spoken to the people together since the season ended, so they know what we think about the whole quitting situation, but it's continued to get worse with, more drama in the whole sense of everything that's been going on, from him leaving Tua. Obviously, he knew what he was doing, leaving him off that list. Armstead had to come out and do some, damage control. Even is trying to still be an ambassador for the team, even though he retired. And obviously he's had the other personal life drama going on with his wife and such like that too. Where are you at with the Tyreek Hill situation? It's obvious it's obvious we're stuck at this point. But let me ask you this: if something big happens, let's say something on the level of the Marina incident, would you be shocked if they actually just turned around and cut him?
I would be because of
I post you first. I
their
mean, too.
accounting
Yeah.
and look, like they're not going to spend an entire offseason cleaning up their books and
Yeah.
tidying them up to then completely mess them up, with a Tyreek Hill cut.
Yeah.
But it's obvious what's happened with Tyreek. They wanted to trade him, but they just couldn't. The guy damaged his trade value at every single turn. And now he's had those 2 surgeries.
Mhm.
The first one to fix it, the second one to close up the wound.
Take the pins out. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's completely destroyed his trade value. So he's gonna be on the team. So all you can do is make the best of it. And then at the end of the season, he's either gonna have some trade value because he had a good season, or he's gonna have no trade value because he had a bad season, and then you're gonna have to cut him next offseason. So he's here for one more year, and we just got to make the best of it. It's hasn't gone the way you would want it to go.
Yeah.
As far as with Tyreek this offseason, because you wanted to trade him. You wanted to trade him for an asset. And he's I guess damaged that. Who knows if some of it's his own doing and some of it is not. Some of it's just that injury and his play this past year.
Yeah. But let me ask you this, okay, man? We've both been around the block. All right. We know people. Everyone out here probably watching this knows someone in their life where let's talk about his personal life for a second with what he's going through with his wife and everything. Isn't a part of you worried that, like, if we don't get off to the greatest start in the world, with what's going on with his wife and everything, this guy could go into a dark place. And, Miami might be one of the worst places a professional athlete can go into, a dark place personally. You know what I mean? And isn't there a little part of you that's really worried that if things don't get off to a good start and things continue to go sideways with him and his wife, that this situation could get even worse? Like, I'm at the point where I wouldn't be shocked if that happened and, like, Bradley Chubb ended up throwing fisticuffs with him in the locker room. That wouldn't even shock me if that came out. You know what I mean? Like, isn't a part of you worried about where it kind of feels like we're sitting on a volcano that's just ready to explode with what's going on personal life, and all it feels like it's going to take to be that tipping point is if this team has a bad start. Do you share that sentiment or no?
I do and I don't, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
I think one thing that Dolphins do have going in their favor is this divorce that he is actually going through, because I think that's going to refocus him. Okay, that's going to refocus him onto football. Now, here's the bad news: what if the football doesn't go too well?
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that this team is best served with Jalen Waddle being the primary.
I agree.
And there's numbers to back that up.
And Jonah,
some of it is proprietary, but and that I can't divulge. But the best incarnations of this team is actually with Jalen Waddle as primary, because the gravitational pull toward Tyreek Hill and a lot of coverages allows Jalen Waddle to work in the short area one-on-one. Yeah. And Jalen Waddle in the short area one-on-one is unguardable. Like, you can't stick him inside in the short zone. So that's the good news and the bad news. So you're gonna have to get good results on the football side to keep him on the straight and narrow. But like I said, we're just counting down the time. It's one season. Got to make it through this one season with Tyreek Hill before we cut bait.
Yeah. All right. So let's keep it going, and we'll go chronologically. So before the draft, it was known internally the situation going on with Jalen Ramsey. Obviously it was known before free agency, which makes it even more of a little bit of a piss off that they didn't handle it better in free agency when they knew what was on the horizon and what they're on the cusp of with this whole Ramsey situation, but I digress. Your take on the Ramsey situation and where we're at. The Rams are interested. Raheem Morris and his love with Ramsey, the Falcons, they make sense. I know the Raiders are hungry for a corner as well. There's teams out there that make sense for Jalen Ramsey. But one of the sticking points has been reported that a lot of these teams don't want to take on the full salary. Now, deeper than this, we have what's been labeled as irreparable the relationship between Mike McDaniel and Jalen Ramsey. Now when when that good old boy Slick Rick broke that a Dolphin player was going to be traded, and I verified and put it on my Patreon and my channel, within 40 minutes I had it that it was Jalen Ramsey. And then within 24 hours I had another report. I was reported before that Armando little article came out about 10 to 12 days before that on Patreon. I was already talking about how I'd already got verification that Ramsey was not a fan of the culture that Mike McDaniel's built, the demeanor of the coach, the coaching style of the coach. But on the flip side, we've heard he likes Weaver. He likes Chris Greer. It's just he doesn't like Mike McDaniel. And I do think, there's a couple of varying factors, right? There's no guaranteed money after this year. The whole Tyreek situation, don't think he's a huge fan of the whole Tyreek situation. What's your take on Ramsey? Is it a red flag to you that he doesn't like McDaniel, or are you in the boat of, oh, this has happened in other places, it is what it is with this guy? And what do you think they end up getting for Jalen Ramsey?
Well, I have no sympathy for Jalen Ramsey. I love the player. Okay. I think he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. As of right now, he has that trajectory to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. But part of the problem here is Mike McDaniel's doing, but most of it is Jalen Ramsey. He's done this everywhere he's been with all kinds of coaches. Okay, the very best of coaches to obscure coaches to ones that he wants to go back to now. Because I don't know if you've noticed, but the Rams are essentially just doing that tampering thing that they're allowed to get away with every single year for whatever reason. Okay. That a head coach admits that he's had, communications with another team's player is embarrassing, that the NFL won't do anything about it. But anyway.
That's true. I didn't actually think about that. That's a good point.
Yeah, Sean McVay basically said, I keep in touch with him all the time. And I'm like, oh, that's nice, Sean.
Yeah.
That's nice. That's nice that, that you could, call him up and see how he's doing at any moment of time, and maybe, you could instruct him of how to make a real mess of things down here so he could get his way back to LA. But look, I think most of this is Mike McDaniel's doing. When Jalen Ramsey came in, if you ever been to camp and you watch these guys on the sideline, Mike McDaniel had his own little clique that he would communicate with consistently during practices. And it consisted of Jalen Ramsey, Teron Armstead. At a time, it was Christian Wilkins and Robert Hunt as well. But it also included Tua Tagovailoa. Last year, it was mostly Jalen Ramsey on defense that he would talk to and they would have communication with. He created this atmosphere that it was a player empowerment atmosphere where you could take ownership of your own thing. You could take ownership of your team. It's your team. It's not my team. Last year, as soon as they started losing, Mike McDaniel decided to assert a little bit more of his control. And lo and behold, who resented that? Jalen Ramsey. So Jalen Ramsey just got, in my opinion, he got the wrong message originally from Mike McDaniel. And now Mike McDaniel is essentially paying for it because Jalen Ramsey doesn't like the new, the new Mike McDaniel, which essentially takes back some of the control from that he gave away to players willingly. So now he's taking it back and they don't like it. It takes a certain type of player to be a good soldier in this regard. They have a lot of those guys on this team. Jalen Ramsey is not one of them. Jalen Ramsey, very strong-willed. He's done this before. He's doing it again. And if I'm the Dolphins, I play hardball. Look, we're under no stress and we're under no obligation to take a deal that we do not want. So I think that they'll wait. I think they'll wait past June 1st to help with the cap ramifications. And I don't think they're going to fire sale him. I think they're going to try to get a legitimate asset in return for Jalen Ramsey. Now, are they going to get a second-round pick? No.
No.
Will they hold out for a third-round pick? Possibly.
Yeah, they're going to try and get a third or fourth. Like, especially if these teams want us to take on most of the cap. If you want us to take on all that cap, okay, higher pick, right? If you're willing to eat a lot of that cap, okay, let's talk about a 4th-round pick, but I'm not. Don't even call me for a 5th. Like, that's what I'd be like. Don't even call me. Don't even pick up the phone.
I completely agree with you.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
And I know people are saying, "Oh, but remember what he did in Jacksonville, where he faked an injury." Look, he was going to fake an injury last year if we didn't extend him. Okay.
What did X
Remember
do
that
to
he had
us? 'Cause it
mysteriously
worked with
had a
X.
lower extremity injury
Yeah.
last year. Remember?
And it worked with X. He had already seen it work with X, right?
Yeah. So then he does it, right, and he gets paid. Look, if you're going to do it again here, we'll just bench you. Look, the Miami Heat. Look, it didn't work out for the Miami Heat. It didn't work out for Jimmy Butler either. Okay, although Jimmy Butler got his money, the Miami Heat played it just right. The Miami Heat said, "Oh, you're going to do this faking an injury thing, right? All right, we'll suspend you, and then we'll trade you. And we're going to trade you for the best deal possible that we can get. We'll play hardball with you."
Yeah.
Look, the Dolphins can do that. They could. There's mechanisms to stash a player on their team if the player is insubordinate, and quite frankly, you could sue him for his money at the end of the season. So
where are you?
If he wants to play real hardball, the Dolphins can play hardball as well. In the meantime, I think that they'll try to essentially sell him for the best deal possible. If they could get a 3rd-round pick and they take on most of the salary, I think they'll do that.
Where are you at with the? Let's talk about the cornerback market, because I think the smart play would be try to land that 3rd or 4th-round pick. You already landed a 3rd-round pick from trading back from 116, and then try to flip one of those picks. Either the 3rd round you got for trading back from 116, or the 3rd or 4th you get in return for Ramsey, because you're hopefully going to get a 4th-round compensatory pick for Holland to replace one of those picks. Maybe flip it back for another corner. Now, the problem is the market is thin, and they come with their little tag. So some of the big names out there are like Jair Alexander is out there, but obviously he's got the injury history. A guy I like, but I think he's more of a solid number 2 than he is ready to take on a number 1, and I think he makes a lot of sense with what they want. We were talking privately before we went live here about what we know they want to kind of do coverage-wise. I think a guy that would make sense for that is Jalen Watson out of Kansas City. They're not going to be able to extend him because Trent McDuffie and the money they're already handing out. But the options are kind of slim. I mean, because Russell Douglas, Stephon Gilmore, guys kind of over the hill. What are your thoughts of, okay, let's say we do move off Ramsey because we get the right deal. What are your thoughts on the options out there to, I don't want to use the word to replace him, but to, potentially lessen the blow of the loss, even if Ramsey looked like he was losing a step last year as he's going over that, daunting over the 30 hill that isn't usually good for cornerbacks.
Well, we know that they've made contact with Rasul Douglas. I think he has an offer in hand, actually.
He does. He rejected.
Okay.
Yeah.
So obviously when a guy has an offer in hand and then he goes to Seattle to shop the offer, is that the offer is not very good.
Yeah, the notorious Greer lowball. That's what it was.
Yeah, well, we know Chris Greer's out there, rubbing pennies together saying, "Here, take this."
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Him and Shore, yeah.
Look, I told you, that's why it makes no sense whatsoever to me that they're going to fire sale Jalen Ramsey. You don't spend an entire offseason cleaning up your cap, cleaning up your books to then destroy it, So that's why I think they're going to hold pretty firm to whatever offer they make. Look, they spoke with Stephon Gilmore as well. There's no I haven't heard anything about them speaking with Asante Samuel, but he has an injury history that's an issue.
Yeah.
So
the neck.
Will they trade for a guy? There's a few guys out there that are kind of appetizing, but are you going to get back into the expensive cornerback market? So there's some options, and especially with the way that they want to play defense this year, they essentially are trading off one for the other. They're not going to have a balanced defense. They're going to rely on that pass rush, and they're going to rely on interior push to essentially hide their cornerback play. And they might even play a lot of big nickel to hide it even further and basically condense the field to outside the hashes. Okay. So they were more of a middle of the field open defense before. I think they're going to be damn near guaranteed to be a middle of the field closed defense this coming season. So especially with everything that they've added on the team, including even their new linebacking core. Yeah. So yeah, I would expect them to sign one of these guys, and once they sign one of these guys, I think they might go as is, really. And they're hoping, I think one of those guys is gonna develop. If it's not the draft pick and Jason Marshall, it's gonna be one of the UDFAs that they brought back last year. I know they like Storm Duck a lot, so
And then like
and you got
BJ
Cater
Adams a
Cole.
lot. And
You got Cater Cole on the other side. Oh, another guy that they did make contact with, and he's a guy I absolutely love is Mike Hilton. But Mike Hilton is a nickel specialist.
Yeah. So, like, that's the thing. Like, Mike Hilton's out there on the free agent market. Amik Robertson's out there on the trade market. If you land those guys, what's the plan? You're shifting Kohu out?
Yeah, I think that's what
Which
they'll
I
plan
think
on
they're
doing.
gonna. I think I've been telling fans. I think be prepared. I think Kohu's gonna see a lot more boundary play because they started last year. It looked like they were starting to tinker with that transition. So,
And look, one thing you can say about Cater Kohu, he's played in 3 different systems down here.
Mhm.
But last year, the second half of the season, he seemed to really take
clicking.
to the system.
Yeah,
It was
click.
the light bulb
Yeah.
turned on for him, and you could see him coming along.
Yeah.
I think we're going to be fine there. And this is going to be his second year in the same system.
Yeah.
He should take to it.
I'm telling you.
I think they feel pretty good about one side of the defense.
I'm telling you, and I think they're really high on BJ Adams. I know he's a UDFA, but I think they're super. They brought him on a 30 visit. I think they're really high on him, man. That UDFA class is pretty good. But let's talk about this. The draft. Okay. They've gone ahead now, and we've got Chop coming back. We've got Phillips coming back. We've got Chubb coming back. We've got Zach Sealer coming back. They brought back Benito Jones. Mo Kamara second year. Are we going to see Grayson Murphy maybe this year? You know what I mean? One of the highest pressure rate in his draft class when he came out, and we put him on the back burner.
And Quinn Bell on the minimum as well.
Yeah, I kind of purposely left him out after everyone hyped him up last year, and then we got what we got. Anyways, now they've added Kenneth Grant to that front. Let me ask you this. Kenneth Grant, absolute monster. Wins with his athleticism, his raw power, his length, and yet, just kind of like Chop, he's still got a pass rush game plan and a bag of tricks that still need to be refined a little bit. Good old Anthony Weaver is going to help him with that. Do you see a world where, similar to kind of the Rams last year, Alf, where the Dolphins could have the perfect blend of veterans as well as youth, and we could potentially have one of, if not the best defensive front in the NFL this year, especially in the AFC?
Yeah, I could see that happening for them. That's the plan. Like, it's obvious that was the plan, right?
Yeah.
And what I like about these things is when you say things on Twitter and you say things on your podcast and then they happen, they can't accuse you of being like a Johnny come lately and just blowing sunshine up people's asses.
Yeah.
Like, nobody can accuse me of that, because I said right before the draft they're going to have to spend the entire draft essentially on defensive players.
Yeah.
And they're going to need at least 3 interior defensive linemen. And they kind of hit on the guys that I wanted. Like, my DT1 was Kenneth Grant. Like, that's who I wanted. And when people just dismiss him as a nose tackle, he's not a nose tackle.
Yeah,
he's a 3 tech.
Yeah.
He could play everywhere along that defensive line. Yeah. I think he's going to be great in this system. I think he's going to be a really, really good player. You saw his snap counts go up every single year at Michigan. He's an ascending player, and you're getting him at just the right time, and he's young. So you get to bring him into your system. You get to develop him. I think he's going to be a perfect complement next to Zach Sealer.
Oh.
And I love Jordan Phillips. I think Jordan Phillips, man, he's going to be that consummate zero. Like, he's a guy that you can play at 0 and 1 shade, and he's going to pay dividends. The guy's strong as hell. Like, he's going to come in at 20 years old, because he's going to turn 21 during the season, I believe, right? He's going to turn 21 during the season, and he's going to come in already as probably the squat rank champion, because I know he squats 665 pounds.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Okay, guy's strong as hell. All right. Somebody turned me on to these numbers. He did a 365-pound overhead press. The world record is by Eddie Hall, and it's 465 pounds. So everybody will say, oh, it's 100 more pounds. Yeah, but Eddie Hall did it at 350 pounds. This guy did it, Jordan Phillips, did it at 290 pounds.
Yeah, he's a monster.
Okay, so we're going to have a guy who's going to be hard to displace. All right. So I think that they've done wonders with the interior defensive line. The only concern again is that secondary. They're trading one off for the other, so they're banking on the health of their edge players, and that's what's going to have to pan out for them. If that doesn't pan out for them, I could see issues developing. But one thing that is for sure is, you never like to say that one side of the ball or another side of the ball is complete and you're set and you're stacked, because you never really are. Because you're always, and I mean every team is always 1 or 2 injuries away from scrambling. All right. But I think the Dolphins are pretty set on the offensive side of the ball. And they're just doing trade-offs on defense right now. And to be honest with you, I'm pretty excited about that. I'm pretty excited where they are right now with their roster.
Yeah, like with Kenneth Grant, I mean, especially go watch that, you see a lot of plays. I mean, that play everyone loves against Penn State, where he hunted down the running back. I mean, that came from the 4-eye. That didn't even come from like a 0 spot. You know what I mean? Like, I think, I hate the South Florida media is really, it's because these guys don't watch film or don't know how to evaluate players. They see his weight and they automatically pigeonhole him as a nose tech without realizing, like, bro, like, think of how wide you can play him out if you want to go in a wide 9 alignment, because of that athleticism. I mean, this guy could flex out to a 5 tech. If you could stand up Deion Walker and rush him off the edge, what do you think you could do with a guy like Kenneth Grant? I think the ceiling is higher than Wilkins. I think he's a better athlete than Wilkins. And what I always remind people, and because I don't care what anyone says, brother. That Kenneth Grant to Dolphins train started on this channel in October, November last year with me and Neil, and it was always about the scary thing about him that not enough people talk about is this man was winning with his raw traits just as much as Mason Graham as a pass rusher, and Mason Graham is more of a finished product. Like, the ceiling is freaking so high for this kid, and man, this is why, if things do go sideways with McDaniel, I want to keep Weaver here because I want to man, you get this kid under Weaver give me Weaver for 2 more years, and I know we're only going to get 1. If you could give me Weaver for 2 more years and Kenneth Grant under him, everyone thought what he did with Matabuki was special. You know what he's going to do with Kenneth Grant, man? Like, Kenneth Grant, like Will Johnson, and like Travis Hunter, these are guys who had the ceiling where they could be the best player in the draft when this is all said and done, and I think I despise, and there's certain people out in the South Florida media that pigeonhole him as a nose tackle. I think that does him a big injustice. And you mentioned the snap count. Last year was the first year he had over 500 snaps. That's another thing. People were pigeonholing him as only a 2-down player, when it's like, no, if you watched his ascent at Michigan, he's becoming the 3-down player, but he needed the reps and he needed the development to grow into it. I mean, you're talking about a guy when he was 360, this guy was clocked running 18.75 miles per hour at 360 pounds, man. Like, we're talking like what he does to those Michigan Plilo stairs, those famous Plilo stairs over there, like things of legend over here with Kenneth Grant. We are talking about, dude, number 3 on the athletic freak list heading into the college season last year. Like, we're talking about like a special freaking player. And just like Travis Hunter, what doesn't get talked about enough is Kenneth Grant has it up here too. He's a very, 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 very intelligent player. And then you talk about Jordan Phillips, man. And what's crazy about Jordan Phillips' trajectory is he kind of went the opposite way. He went from Tennessee to Maryland when usually guys go from Maryland to Tennessee, right? And 20 years old, and he's a guy where you got to watch the tape. People are going to stat line watch him and be like, oh, the production, blah, blah, blah. But no, you got to watch the tape. You got to see the upside. And then when you find out what they were doing with him at the Shrine Bowl, right? At the East-West Shrine Bowl, when you find out what they were doing with him, when they got their hands on him, like, I think he's another kid where people looked at Chop and looked at his production and kind of, you remember it, a lot of people in this fan base, media and fans included, were taking a big steaming you-know-what on that draft pick because they were just stat watching, right? And what you gotta see, that's the thing. And this is why, bro. This is why I don't think fans get, and this is why they need to watch people like me or you, or listen to people like me or you, or Dougley or whatever. You know, the problem with the South Florida media, you know, or Ryder McConville or Kyle Krabs, those are people I'll recommend. The problem with the South Florida media, bro, is they know where to put the period and the question mark, but they don't know how to evaluate film. They don't know how to, and one of the big parts of evaluations is what? Projection, right? So when you got no production, you got to be able to project Jordan Phillips out. These guys can't project a kid like that out. They just look at this, you know, like look at, you talked about you love the trade of Savaiinaea. Have you heard some of the stance, some of the, oh, well, if Tate Ratledge is better, then, oh, this is a bust because you didn't take a swing at 98 with that 98 pick, even though the trade value charts, right? Whether the Rich Hill or the Jimmy Johnson trade value chart, one of them, right? We win the trade by 1 point. The other one, we lose by 3 points. What does that tell you? It's a fair trade, but they'll still say, oh, and you know why? Because they can't project out. Because they can't project out. And here's another thing, okay, bro? Think about this. All these people who hate on the trade up for Savaiinaea, Alf, okay? Dude, we would have had to trade up for 98. If you wanted one of those corners, you had to trade up into the 70s, right? Like, what are you going to sit? Why sit there and double up on DT? You would have traded back anyways if you were going to double up on DT. Now, apparently they traded back, from what I understand, they traded back up from 116 because of the run on Walker, Ty Robinson, as well as CJ West right before they picked at 116. But I digress, bro. Like, have you seen these people that are not happy with the Jonah Savaiinaea trade? And what are your thoughts on that? Because I think it's absolutely ludicrous. You know, that's another, bro, that's another bandwagon I started, man. The Jonah Savaiinaea, man. I'm taking the Barry Horowitz pat back on that. But do you kind of look at these fans that are like, yo, all of you that don't like the trade, y'all were the same ones saying you wanted interior help. Like, it's just so oxymoron what's going on with that situation. What's your thoughts on the Savaiinaea pick, and what do you say to fans that don't like the fact that we traded the 98th pick and missed out on another swing on a prospect?
Look, you can accuse Chris Greer of a lot of things, and I have, okay? And you could be unhappy with Chris Greer. You could want him replaced. And I've said I've wanted him replaced because I wanted new eyes on this team.
Yeah.
But one thing you can't accuse him of is losing trades, because he does not lose trades. Like, he's going to get good value for whatever he targets. And his intel on this was spot on. Because Greg Bedard reported the Patriots were going to take Jonah Savaiinaea.
Yeah.
Okay. And not only that, the Raiders were debating taking him right there with that pick anyway. So the Dolphins, this is what I liked about it. They identified a guy. They said, we want this guy, and we want this guy to start. He's a starter for us.
Yeah.
In year one. We are not going to let anybody take him from us, and we're not going to settle. We're going to go get that guy. And then they even replaced the draft pick by making a trade later on in the draft. So I thought that was really, really good work. Now, as far as the player, I've seen the film. I like the film. We just got to see him against, NFL level competition and in pads,
Yeah.
And he's going to get a work. He's going to get a workout, because guess what? He's going to have to go up against the likes of Zach Sealer and Kenneth Grant. So we're going to get to see plenty of him going forward. In my opinion, I think he's going to play right guard. Okay.
Yeah.
It's going to be a simpler position for him to play right away. And I think that's where he's going to settle. And I think they're going to play James Daniels at left guard. Essentially, you're going to have Austin Jackson babysitting Jonah Savaiinaea, and then you're going to have James Daniels babysitting Patrick Paul.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to work out for them going forward. My only concern on that offensive line is, look, I'm not a fan of Liam Eichenberg, but fine. He's on the roster.
Yeah.
In my opinion, he should be OG5 or at best OG4. And right now, I think they have him as OG3, and that's a problem.
Yeah, I agree 110%.
And there's a way you could remedy that, okay? Look, Will Hernandez, I don't think is going to take a contract from the Dolphins because he's going to tell you, no, I'm a starter.
Yeah.
And Brandon Scherf, he's been a starter, and he hasn't missed.
Same.
I think he's missed like 6 snaps in 3 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Brandon Scherf is going to tell you, move on.
Yeah, I
But
agree.
Daniel Brunskill, okay, is a guy you could bring in. He could play center. He could play guard. He could play tackle. He's played all 5 positions.
Yeah.
And last year, he has really good tape at guard. You could bring him in, and that will make me feel pretty good about what you have on the interior offensive line.
Is Cody Whitehair still out there?
I believe he is still out there as well.
Because he can play guard or center, too. That's another one where I'd be like, okay, like, yeah, because I agree with you,
But it's going to have to take one of those 2 guys. It's going to have to
Yeah.
take somebody that's willing to
Yeah.
be OG3. You know what I mean?
Or else we're hoping on a guy like Josh Preby having an Andrew Meyer, like, preseason, and, how Andrew Meyer locked in the backup center as a UDFA. We're hoping Josh Preby can show some of his athleticism and jump one of these guys. Because I'm right there with you. Like, so let's keep talking with the draft, Alf. Okay, so you know me. I'm a college football fan. I don't really claim a team, but if I have to claim a team, it's the Florida Gators because of the Chris Leak and the Tim Tebow years really had me captivated. But I don't really claim a team. Like, I'm a college football fan, and that's just because I evaluate mainly, right? So I want to get your thoughts. I'm not a huge fan of the Jason Marshall pick. Yeah, I understand he was a 5-star recruit coming out. I thought he was a failed project at Florida. I'm not a huge fan of the Dante Trader pick, but I like Dante Trader better. I think he offers you special teams upside that I don't think you're going to get from Jason Marshall. I thought they were better. If you're going to bet on the athleticism, I would have drafted Zoff Frazier out of UTSA, and because he has the ball hawking upside, I think Quincy Riley might have still been on the board too. I don't know, but I know there were.
He got taken right before. That's the guy that they had on their board.
Yeah. But I know there were a couple, and there was a couple good safety options on the board. But also, I mean, we're talking about Liam Eichenberg. And this is what's bringing me up about this. Like, Jackson Slater was still on the board. There were still some good double up on guard options there too. What are your thoughts on the Jason Marshall and the Dante Trader pick?
Dante Trader has good tape in my estimation, and he's a guy that can be a contributor.
Yeah.
And I think he'll be a contributor in year 1 as a special teamer, and I think he'll be a good one.
Okay.
Jason Marshall is just not a guy. Look, I did really like the second half of the draft, but I liked and people. First of all, I hate when people give grades for drafts because none of us really know. Okay.
Yeah.
Like you could give a grade. You could kind of give a grade at the end of the season, but really it's going to take about 2 years, and then you could give a legit grade for an entire draft. But I gave this draft a C, and people were like, wait a minute, so you hated the draft? I'm like, no, I gave an A+ for the first 3 picks and the trade. But I didn't like the second half of their draft. Like, the only guy that I really like in the second half of their draft, I kind of like Ollie Gordon a little bit because I see the vision, But I do like Zeke Biggers, okay? But Jason Marshall, he's one-dimensional. There's some tape to suggest he's kind of grabby, so he could be kind of good in the middle of the field, closed man system, press man system. So I never I've always said this, okay? Because one of my favorite pastimes is evaluating cornerbacks, and I think I have a decent record in that regard. I don't like guys that are one-dimensional in college as far as cornerbacks. If they do one thing in college, usually when you get to the NFL, it never works that way. You never just bring them in and say, look, you're only going to do the thing you did in college, so therefore you're going to be great with us. Yeah. It never works that way, okay? Because in the NFL, DCs need the diversity in play call. So they're going to have to call different things. You're going to have to be able to play several coverages. And, man, I don't know if you've seen him, and I'm pretty sure you have. You've watched this film. If you watch Jason Marshall play even quarters, it's like the fucking moon to him, man. Okay, you might as well ask him to build a rocket ship. Like, he just doesn't know how to do it, So the thing for Jason Marshall is, man, if we just stick him to bump man or match man, middle of field close, we're golden.
Good. Yeah.
You know who that reminds me of? Do you remember Cordrea Tankersley?
Yes.
From Clemson?
Yes.
That's who he was.
Yeah.
But what happened to Cordrea Tankersley? He would flash, right?
Yeah.
But he would flash in games where they would play 65 snaps on defense, and 60 of them were in man.
Yeah.
So he was in his element.
Yeah.
You know, he was in his element. He was playing well in his element. But as soon as you have that one game where you call 20 snaps of zone, you call some quarters, or you call some cover 3, or even cover 7, and you have him roll up, and that guy's in the moon because that guy is rolling up 15 yards deep instead of rolling up 8 yards, and now they're just dumping it off to the running back, and he's just stepping out of bounds with 8-yard gains over and over again in front of your cornerback because your cornerback's too stupid to roll up at 15 instead of 8. I fear that that's who they have in Jason Marshall, you know?
But
the good news is that they have so many guys in front of them that maybe we're never going to see that, and he's going to have time to develop.
But Alf, doesn't that scream UDFA? Like, what are we doing here? Like, what are we doing?
It does. Yeah, you know what it screams?
Adams is
a
be
guy
better,
that I
bro.
really liked. A guy that I really liked last year was Isaiah Johnson, man. That guy is physical.
Yeah.
Okay? Especially in the red zone. Like, he's a guy who's physical, especially at the catch point. But he's one-dimensional. Like, Isaiah Johnson is basically a short zone corner. That's what he is. Although he's 6'3", but he's a short zone, meaning that he plays 10 yards from the line of scrimmage and nothing else. You know what I mean? So, that's my fear with Jason Marshall. I didn't like the second half of their draft, and that's why I gave it a C overall. But, you know, I don't want to really gloss over the fact that I do give their first 3 picks and that trade an A+. I do give that.
All right, so you are not a fan. Okay, so let's get into Ollie Gordon. Now, you know, he's different in the sense of he's much more north-south than the east-west they're used to. 2023 7th in Heisman voting. 2024, the Oklahoma State offensive line goes to the absolute gutter, and so does his game a little bit. Great blocker. What are your thoughts on the Ollie Gordon edition? And you mentioned you see the vision.
Yeah, I see the vision. And I think the vision of this offseason is to try to get this team better in 11 personnel. Start moving away a little bit away from 21 personnel and into 11 personnel. And they want this team to be better in 11 personnel. There's many ways you could do that, okay? And some would say, oh, you want to be better at 11 personnel? Go get a really good wide receiver 3. Well, that's part of it, but it's a tiny, tiny part of it. You got to get better at your guard positions, because if you're in 11 personnel, you're going to face a lot lighter more lighter boxes, and you're going to have to be able to run inside. You're going to have to be able to run inside zone. So I could see the vision. They got 2 new guards. They had Ollie Gordon, who's essentially going to be kind of that one-dimensional player. You got Alexander Madison, who is also kind of one-dimensional. My only issue with Ollie Gordon is that in, you know, the bones of this team are an outside zone running team, right? And he's just not a guy that can get to landmarks like other guys can on this team. He's just not fast enough, you know? But if they are going to stick to that 11 personnel, you know, this new 11 personnel evolution for this team, they want to play more of it. They want to be better at it. Then he's going to pay a lot of dividends, because he's going to be good in pass pro, which is, you need your running back to be really good in 11 personnel in pass pro. And he's going to be a good inside zone runner. And you're going to need that in 11 personnel as well. Yeah. You know, then that also begs the question, who's going to be the tight end? And maybe that's why Pharaoh Brown is here, is to be the inline tight end in 11 personnel. So, because he's pretty decent in pass pro. So Ollie Gordon, I see the vision. You know, there are other guys that I kind of liked. A lot of the guys that I like kind of went for UDFAs. One guy that I really liked was Nate Carter from Michigan State, and he went to Atlanta as a UDFA. He's basically a Raheem Mostert clone, you know, but they didn't want a Raheem Mostert clone. You know, Nate Carter ran, I think, a 4.38 at his pro day. So he's fast. He's 5'10", 205 pounds. Who does that sound like? You know what I mean? That's essentially Raheem Mostert. They didn't want that. They wanted a bruiser. They wanted a guy to run inside zone with. And Ollie Gordon is the guy who fits for them.
Are you shocked they passed on Damian Martinez?
I am. Because if you wanted Ollie Gordon, man, look, I've said this before. Damian Martinez is a guy that is absolutely great at absolutely everything except hitting home runs. Okay. And even then, in the bowl game, he took 180 yards. All right. And then he ran at the combine. That's not slow. Okay, this is a 230-pound man. And I understand that he showed up at 217 pounds so he could run a faster 40 time, but his 40 times weren't slow by any stretch of the imagination. But Demi Martinez, man, that guy's a dog. Inside, he's almost. I think my partner said it best in his draft book. He said that Demi Martinez runs the ball like he's offended that you're trying to tackle him.
Mhm.
You know, he is tough as nails. He can catch the ball. He's good in pass pro. He's excellent in inside zone. You know, he's essentially what they want Ollie Gordon to be, but their evaluation was different than mine, and they liked Ollie Gordon best. So I'll defer to them, and that's one that I will defer to them because, you know, they're the offensive coaches that decided that this is the guy that's going to fit our system. He's going to fit it better, and you know, I'll defer to them on that one in particular.
Where are you at with the Quinn Ewers pick?
Oh, I absolutely hate it. I don't see. There's not one redeeming factor that I saw on film with Quinn Ewers going back really 2 seasons. Okay. Texas for 2 years has been one of the most talented teams. I told you my evaluation of Jackson Dart got hurt. Like in the preseason, I had Jackson Dart as QB1, and not only QB1, but I had him as the first overall pick and the Heisman winner going into the season. And I bet both. Okay. So I put in a bet for him to win the Heisman. I put in a bet for him to be the first overall pick in the NFL draft before the season started. And I softened my evaluation on him because of what Ole Miss produced in the season. I thought most of it was stuff that he could have driven, right? Same thing with Quinn Ewers, except Jackson Dart has much better tape. So Quinn Ewers, I thought he was a UDFA type. I would have taken Kyle McCord. I would have taken Will Howard. You know, of course I would have taken Shedeur Sanders in the 5th round. For God's sake, of course I would have. You know, I would have even considered him in the 3rd. But yeah, Quinn Ewers, I just don't see the vision with him, but they do. And it's really Mike McDaniel. It's another Mike McDaniel project. The last one didn't work out with Skylar Thompson. We'll see how this one works out. We're going to get a pretty good long look at him in training camp because QB3 in training camp gets to play on the scout team, and he gets essentially equal reps to QB2. So, and especially going into the games, there's going to be good weeks because going into the games in the preseason, QB1, you know, the first team offense, especially for the first preseason game, the first team offense gets damn near 0 reps that week. So you're going to get to see QB2 and QB3 take all the reps for an entire week. And you're going to get to evaluate Quinn Ewers in practice for an entire week. I can't wait for that week. I want to see it because that's how I made my determination on Skylar Thompson. I was like, this guy cannot play.
Let me ask.
He cannot play.
Let me ask you this, how can you hate a 7th round pick? It's a glorified UDFA. Like you can't hate these picks though. Like
the only way to look at it and hate on it is you essentially passed up on all of the other guys. You know,
at 231, what are you really passing on?
Yeah, there's almost nothing there. Really.
You know, I mean, let's go back. I mean, he was pretty much considered a consensus, almost, you know, top 10 pick heading into the season. The problem with him is kind of like what happened with Shedeur. He plateaued, right? Everyone thought he was going to build off 2023, and both of the players plateaued, and that was also a big problem with their evaluation. Now, here's the thing. The vision is quite clear because he can attack the short to intermediate level in the middle of the field. That's where he gets his best drive and velocity. Now, I think what's happened is the injuries have stacked up and taken something off of his game, especially when you start getting into the deep ball. Like he puts too much air under those balls. He doesn't drive them because he's lost the drive with his injuries a little bit, man. I see the vision. I do think he's going to be better than Skylar Thompson, because I think when you're looking at what's going to be asked in this version of our West Coast offense, I think he kind of fits what they're going to ask. Like, just be efficient from the short to intermediate level. If the deep shot opens up, you know, try and take it. But I think he's going to be like, I'll tell you right now, bro. I trust him more in structure from what I saw in Texas than I don't trust Zach Wilson in structure. Zach Wilson, since BYU, all of the best stuff has come out of structure. And I keep telling people, and people are going to eventually, I think we're going to see it this offseason. People are going to see what I'm talking about. Sean Payton told us without telling us what the deal was, all right? They made Jarrett Stidham, who has far less arm talent, far less athleticism. They made him the highest paid backup quarterback in the NFL for the second year in a row, and let Zach Wilson, with the bigger arm, with the more athleticism, with the better overall traits, walk. And what is Sean Payton notorious for hating in his quarterbacks? Why did he despise Russell Wilson? Because they weren't good enough and he couldn't trust them to be efficient in structure. And I think that's what the issue with Zach Wilson is going to be. Now, is Quinn going to live up to it? I don't know. But, I mean, he's a smart kid. And I think when you're looking for what's asked from an in-structure standpoint in this offense, I think he's a better fit than Zach Wilson. I honestly do. Now, he needs something cleaned up. I don't know if you watched that Gruden's quarterback camp, but he's redoing all of his footwork. That was he talked about how teams told him you need to clean up
that's
your
important.
Footwork. And that's
extremely important.
Same thing. Shador and him had the same thing. You need to clean up the footwork, both of you, big time. You know what I mean? So, and I don't know, man. I don't think he's the guy. They were touting him coming out of high school into Ohio State and Texas, but he should have been. I think he was a 5th round pick. I think Shador wasn't a 5th round pick. I think Shador was, if Dylan Gabriel's going in the 3rd, then Shador is a 3rd round pick by that standard. You know what I mean? I don't know, man. I don't hate the pick. I know they've been infatuated with him since Xavier Worthy's pro day as well, too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm not expecting a savior. All I want is, bro, just give me a competent backup. We haven't had one since Tua's been here. Everyone ends up being a mitigated disaster sooner or later. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
We all.
Yeah, but look, I think we're back to hoping and praying, to be honest with you. Okay.
That's what everyone is. We're hoping and praying Zach Wilson can show us he can play in structure.
Yeah. The thing about Zach Wilson is that they're doing that thing again where they're doing that, Captain Savaiinaea thing where, I can fix him. You know what I'm saying?
It is.
And Mike McDaniel's like, man, he has it all. He has the arm strength. He has the footwork when he could, when I could just essentially, the problem is that you can't plug him into anything and have Mike McDaniel with a controller on the sideline. He's gonna do what Zach Wilson does when the bullets start flying. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You know what it feels like, Alf? It feels like his love for Trey Lance all over again. Remember, he was the one that, Shanahan wanted Mac Jones, and McDaniel was the one that basically convinced that room, Trey Lance is the guy with all those traits. It feels like
to be fair, I remember when those debates were raging, and I was like, I don't see the vision in Mac Jones at all. I think he's bad.
Yeah, both ended up being bad.
Right?
And
they both ended up being terrible. Yeah.
That draft class wasn't very good. Let's be honest, right?
No.
So I see the vision, but bro, here's my problem. We can't even draft kids anymore, and you got people on social media. Oh, he's gonna take Tua's spot, and I keep telling these people, no, none of these kids are gonna take Tua's spot, man. You got a whole. You know what your expectation should be? Year 1, make the team, show us something. Year 2, go take that quarterback 2 job. That should be your expectation for what you're drafting. Not, this, like you said, Captain Savaiinaea. No, these guys aren't going to be a savior, right? Everyone thinks, Tom Brady and Brock Purdy were found that late, Alf, blah, blah, blah. Oh, come on, bro. 2 outliers in 50 years of the draft.
People got to remember, we would have never heard of Brock Purdy in a million years if the Dolphins didn't knock out Jimmy Garoppolo.
That's true.
Okay? If Jalen Phillips doesn't hit Jimmy Garoppolo and Jimmy Garoppolo breaks his ankle, if that doesn't happen in that game, first of all, we probably win. Okay?
Yeah, we do.
We probably win.
Yeah.
But second of all, we never hear from Brock Purdy, ever.
Jimmy G, yeah.
Because if you remember that game, I believe they had C.J. Beathard on that team.
They did.
Okay? And he was also injured. Brock Purdy got elevated for that game.
Yeah.
As the backup quarterback. So there was also a world where the backup would have been C.J. Beathard coming into the game against us instead of Brock Purdy. So, if people are hoping and wishing, he could be QB1 eventually. No, it doesn't. Those evaluations stick, okay? Yeah. And he was evaluated as a UDFA 7th round pick.
Yeah.
And that's how he was drafted. He was drafted as a 7th round pick. They didn't want to compete for him as a UDFA, so they used a draft pick on him. That's his evaluation. He's not being brought in to be the savior. He's not being brought in to compete with Tua Tagovailoa. Tua Tagovailoa is a legit top 10 quarterback in the NFL, but it's now year 6 of the total disrespect of
It's
Tua
crazy.
Tagovailoa.
It's crazy. It's crazy, Alf. I don't get it, man. Like, and then, you just try to sit here and the expectations they put on these players, and you just try to be logical and just, funny enough, spit some reason to these people and just try to get through to them. Like, yo,
No, the evaluation for Tua Tagovailoa is completely lost. Okay, it's lost. It's gone. There is no objectivity anymore.
Yeah,
like I got into this in the regular season with everybody saying, "Oh, he was terrible in the first half against the Packers, and that's why they lost." First of all, how terrible can you be when you go 37 for 46 for 365 yards and 2 touchdowns, and you have no turnovers and a 114 quarterback rating? So how terrible could you have been in the first half? Go watch that game in the first half. He missed on one pass. And that one pass, they're putting out the entire first half on him.
Wasn't it in the third quarter? Didn't he have us? Remember, it came down to bad play calling, right? Because didn't he have us in the red zone? And he was going to bring us. He was either going to bring us to tie the game or within one score. And then didn't McDaniel have a bunch of poor play calling? And then we didn't score, right?
He tried to call a tunnel screen, and then he ran the ball three straight times.
And we didn't end up scoring on the drive, right? And McDaniel is the one who. And remind me, were we about to tie the game or bring it into within one score? It was one of the two.
It's going to be inside of one score.
Yeah, and it was because of two. Like, yeah, bro, dude. Listen, here's the thing, dude. Like, listen, okay, because I know you were on the Tua bandwagon. You were driving the train just like I was on YouTube. You were driving it through the Spotify airwaves with the 3 yards per carry guys before the draft. Dude, they'll try to tell us, Alf, that we were wrong about Tua. This is a guy who's first Pro Bowl quarterback for the Miami Dolphins in 30-plus years, led the league in passing yards, passer rating, completion percentage, and they try to tell us that we were wrong and that he sucks and that he's bad. And they try to actually hold it like, they won't talk about how I was right about Penei Sewell. They won't talk about how you were right about a player. They'll always come back to, Tua, you were wrong about Tua. He sucks, when it's like, dude, he's done things no Dolphins quarterback's done in 30-plus years, but y'all will hold a guy like Chad Pennington in 2008 to this high standard because we won the division when he didn't even throw for 20 touchdowns. And let's be honest, if it wasn't for Ronnie Brown, the Wildcat, and Tom Brady getting hurt, do we even win the division with Chad Pennington? So please, it's just the disrespect and how they minimize Tua's accomplishments is absolutely ludicrous. And it's one thing to not come from our fan base, but it's crazy to me, Alf, when it does come from our fan base. I'm going to be honest with you.
Oh, and it comes from our fan base the whole time. And what makes me laugh is that they think they're the majority. And there's evidence to suggest that they're the extreme minority.
Yeah.
It's like 15% of the entire fan base that hates Tua Tagovailoa. Like 15%. Yeah. And there's evidence, real evidence. I'm talking about polls that large networks have produced to get this information. Why do you think that they keep talking about Tua Tagovailoa out of nowhere?
Yeah.
It's because it drives clicks and it gets them views because they know that he's popular down here.
Yeah.
Okay. But, it also doesn't help. What also helps is that we're so right about Justin Herbert at every single turn.
Yeah.
I'll never forget. Right before that playoff game, everybody took to Twitter, and then they disappeared. Remember, everybody took to Twitter and said, "Watch how he plays against the Texans, and compare it to the way Tua played against the Texans 3 weeks ago." Right?
Yeah.
Well, how many picks did he throw?
Yeah. Didn't y'all learn your lesson against the Jags? Didn't you guys learn your lesson with his playoff game against the Jags? Don't bet on that horse. You know?
So now Justin Herbert is a special case, and that's who Tua will be forever compared to.
I agree.
I think the comparison has been favorable for Tua so far. Yeah. His only issue is his health, and that's the main issue right now. Yeah. And that's why I think they got to start, preparing something for at least 2 years from now. Yeah. So that's why I have advocated for next year. They should be in that quarterback market in the draft because it's going to be a great class coming up.
Lenoris Sellers, if he takes that next step. Oh,
yep.
Baby.
Although I think he might be out of reach I think Tua will put him out of reach because if Tua's healthy, they won't have a chance at all to get Sellers.
Or Nussmeier or Aller if they take the next step too. So
Yeah.
it's going to be, anyways, let the people know where they can find you and what you got going on, Alf.
Well, if you want to listen to us, man, it's pretty simple. We're pretty much everywhere you get your podcast. It's the number 3 yards per carry. Our Twitter account is at 3 yards per carry, the number 3 yards per carry. You want to become a member of our Discord? You go to Discord and you go to discord.gg/onlyfins. You can see it right here. It's on my t-shirt. And you become a member there, all access for $4.99 a month. We have over 2,000 members in there right now. I think today they're debating 2 again. So I don't know what the hell they're probably on the schedule today. But you could check that out whenever you guys get a chance.
Awesome. Always a pleasure to do it with you, man. I appreciate you doing this as always. Guys, do me the favor, smash the like button. Subscribe if you are new. And as always, fins up. See you on the next one. Take it easy, everyone.